Having enough money to retire, or at least give us choices later on in life, is one of the most important goals, I think, for most people. Yet, how much time do we spend understanding what we need to do to get there? I mean, let's be honest, when last did any of us actually look at our retirement benefit statements? In this three-part series, sponsored by 10x Investments, we're going to look at how South Africans can start to take control of their own retirement outcomes. I'm consumer financial journalist Maya Fisher-French, and joining me today to discuss how technology can help us achieve our retirement outcomes and cut costs, I'm joined by Rupert Sully, who is the head of direct-to-consumer at 10x Investments. So welcome, Rupert. What does 10x do, and are you really primarily focused on retirement solutions?
Hi, Maya. Thanks for having me. Yes, we very much, 10x Investments, we help people with their retirement investments. We do help them with discretionary investments as well, but really our focus is that golden thread through life as they save towards their retirement. So whether that's their retirement annuities, their preservation funds, living annuities. It's a tech-led business, very much digital first, to bring those advantages through to people, both costs and the other ones, which I'm sure we'll get into in detail. And it comes down to really keeping the costs low around the performance of the fund, and then simplicity and transparency for people, for South Africans, to get the most out of their retirement.
I want to go back to this idea of being tech-led, right? Because ultimately that means you engage with your clients through a digital platform, which, as you mentioned, keeps costs down. But how do you manage that user experience? I'm thinking, if I'm starting an investment and I'm putting my money into something, or maybe I'm transferring my pension fund into a preservation fund and I'm dealing with millions of rands, and I suddenly am dealing on this tech thing and I get into a digital void and I start to panic. How do you manage that process? Do you not need kind of a human somewhere in that?
I'm very glad you've chosen a preservation fund there as an example. It's a lovely one to unpack. And first and foremost, it brings up such a valid point, which we see in terms of lack of people being able to find educational content on this. A lot of people don't even understand the preservation fund. They think of retirement annuities, they know about pension and provident, they might understand the living annuity, but they don't even know that when they move employers, that they should think very carefully about what they do with their provident fund, and that they have the option to move it to companies like 10x into a preservation fund. But there is a need at times to talk to a human. Internally, we talk about that as a human-augmented process. Most of the time, you want simple, easy, see where your funds are, be able to log in online. But there are complex matters which we don't want to remove the ability for someone to talk to a human. So we do have a team of investment consultants, and at a click of a button, anybody on the site can go, even if they're not a client yet, even if they're thinking and they're weighing up their options. There's a button on the 10x website called Contact Me. There are another number of other places in the process, and that'll put them in touch with an investment consultant who will be their dedicated investment consultant. They are not advisors. They are not going to tell the person what to do. They're just going to unpack the options so the person actually understands what's going on and allows the person to then make the decision accordingly. And we offer that at no additional cost. That is a human there to help the person understand the context. Because we really believe, and I feel very strongly, that all South Africans, even if they wish to use an advisor, which is totally their choice, they need to be aware it's not a mandatory choice. You can also go direct, as 10x Investment offers and others, but that you should really understand the basics. Do your own research and understand the basics of your retirement investments. It's one of the largest, if not the most important investment of your life. So you should understand the parameters, understand the costs, know what your EAC is, your effective annual cost. But yes, when needed, we bring a human into the loop.
I think it's really important what you just said there, Rupert, understanding yourself. And I think we hand over too easily without understanding our choices. Yeah. And I wonder if that isn't sometimes, for me, the trust element that we lose because we're not taking enough control. One of the other things that I also picked up when I was looking at your website, you don't have a proliferation of funds. Is that on purpose? Is that to try and simplify the process?
It is, and as I've looked at it more and as we've tried to enhance the ability for that person to go through a digital journey, I've become more and more passionate about the philosophy that 10X and stands behind in terms of having a flagship fund. So we really work hard on our flagship fund, which is the 10X Your Future Fund. And over 90% of our retirement investments individuals go into that fund. And it brings a really interesting debate to bear there, which is there is a natural tension, even though people don't like talking about it from the business side, between the company and the individual in terms of what's best. If, let's say, you have 70 funds, you're always going to have a couple of funds that are performing well, that are in the top quartile. It makes you look good as a brand. And it allows some ability to hide behind those. And you're deferring more of the responsibility on the individual now to choose. But it would be like going to a doctor and being given 70 treatment plans, saying these all end towards your goal, but you choose the one. I've chosen the shop now. I want to know what's the best.
What do you think is the best, your flagship?
Totally,
that's what you're asking.
Totally. For me, it brings simplicity and hopefully therefore peace of mind when the person is going through those processes, when they get to the point of choosing fund. And you can talk more to one of our investment consultants about that, because there is obviously nuance as the person's looking at it. But really, like, we need to say, this is the fund, this is our balanced fund that we stake our brand and reputation on. From a point of trust, that's important for me. And the fact that the 10X Your Future Fund has consistently been in the top quartiles is a mark of great pride in terms of how well it's performed. Because it's not like we can go one of our funds. It has to be that fund. That is the fund we're going to put forward as our flagship.
That's a very interesting process, because I think I've always raised the issue that choice is cost. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of investors understand that the more choices there are, the more expensive things become. So I suppose this is part of the whole fee containment thing. It's digital. B, we're not giving you too many choices. We're focusing on what we believe is the best choice. So I suppose that's the kind of balance of trying to keep those fees under control. Do you think that between digital platforms like yourself and all the massive financial online education that's happening, are advisors going to become irrelevant? Are we all going to be doing DIY in the future? How do you find that balance happening?
I think there's totally time and a place for an advisor. There are multiple components of anyone's financial life. And the importance for me is that individual, A, knows that it is a choice and can weigh that up. What are the costs and implications of having an advisor versus not having an advisor? Again, we're talking retirement investments here, which is regulated in some degrees straightforward. There are many open-ended components of your financial portfolio that you may wish to look at differently. So I'm just flagging, I'm looking at, normally people's big nest egg around their retirement investments. One, they need to know that that's an option. And two, do I think it's going to go away? No, I think there's a certain individual that likes to have that advisor in the loop. At the least, it also means it should give them an additional support alongside relying on advice from a human so that they know the fundamentals.
I also do find actually a lot of people saying to me, I want my advisor to talk to me on lifestyle assets as well, my home, my car. So I agree. I think it's become a very different animal to kind of like, buy this RA policy and I'll see you in 30 years' time.
Yes.
I'm going back to this digital platform. I'm very curious as to the demographics. In my head, I'm like, oh, Gen Z, digital, or are you finding that there is a demographic bias, gender, age, or do you find anybody and everybody using a digital platform?
Some of the data is counterintuitive. You'd maybe think that the largest demographic coming to us would be very young, some sort of change, people in their 20s going digital. But I mean, in terms of assets under management, and the high net worth, it's our older group, but it's people going into their preservation funds and living annuities, particularly, who are open-minded to it, who are coming on board. But then in terms of just pure count, we see a lot of people in their mid-30s to late 30s. That's the biggest user count demographic group. And the behavior there is very interesting. Often they just sort of followed someone's advice or from what they'd read, and they just got going when they were in their 20s. And mid-30s, they'd become more savvy. They realized they had some money now in their investment savings, and it's the people who are being proactive and they're doing comparisons and they're looking. and they are transferring, they're switching across. That's our biggest behavior group, which a lot of people don't even know that it is that easy to move providers. So it's actually not so much 20, it's people have done a little bit, and then they found, oh, actually, I can optimize here. I can optimize for cost. I can optimize for ease of use. And they're coming over in their mid-30s.
I'm also thinking, Rupert, that is a demographic, or that age is when you'd usually change jobs for the first time. So you kind of start, you finish university, you maybe work 4 or 5 years at one company, and you change in your early 30s.
Yeah.
So that kind of preservation RA kind of client is definitely going to be coming through at that age. I mentioned at the beginning in my intro that we don't spend enough time learning and building our wealth right around retirement. But what mistakes do you think people are making that are preventing them from achieving these outcomes? We know the terrible stats, only 6% of people can retire and all these. What do you think the issues are?
The biggest mistake we see from behavior and client base is complacency. People get into a fund, or they put into a fund, or their work put them into a product, and they've never stopped to ask, is it right for me? Most people don't understand their costs. They don't even know what to ask for to get their costs. Just the conception of asking for the effective annual cost. People get given part of their cost. They ask for this, they ask for that, and they get a bit bamboozled, to be honest. As long as we can get that first ball rolling, people should at least, in terms of that mistake on complacency, once a year, do a comparison. A lot of providers like 10X will do a comparison report for you where they'll show you performance of the funds you're in versus the funds that are being compared against, what the cost differences are, what the implications there are. And why I said as a mistake is by the time people engage with the likes of 10X, and we do things like a comparison report, our average comparison report comes back at over 2% in terms of where they're sitting. And most people don't know the implication of what those higher fees will do to their funds over time.
Sure, 2% difference in costs?
Well, it's normally about 2 all in, and ours are all on the website, so just under 1% excluding VAT.
So the difference is about 1%.
It's normally about 1.5%.
1% compounding for 20 years is significant, I can assure you.
Another way to put it, it's more than double the cost.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So just to sum up, what are the next steps? What are you going to do to get people to think more about their retirement outcomes?
Yeah, look, we're on a big drive, even in a greater spectrum, to just increase the educational content that's out there and how people get to it. We were talking earlier, and you made a good point that people battle with social media in terms of to know what to trust and not to trust there. And I think that's where there's a responsibility for key brands like 10X to create space where people can come into, like our website, like our blog, and know that the videos that they find there, that the written content is in a controlled environment and is vetted, and that 10X's reputation and brand is behind them. So it's not open-ended. It needs to become a valuable resource that people can go into. We spend a lot of time, and we have various forms of, for instance, calculators that we've built on the site, which a lot of people who aren't even our clients will come in and use because it helps them. And I love seeing that. I have to tell you, I do use your calculators when I'm writing articles. But those are the resources we need as South Africans. And again, those things, it's not necessarily even that complex, but it's just joining a few points. For instance, understanding the erosion of fees on compounding over a long time, for instance, on a product like a retirement annuity, is difficult to do on the back of a napkin. Living annuity, sure, you can see it because you're not going to necessarily be growing, because you're not contributing further. But giving people those tools is massively empowering. And we see a direct benefit of that. That is one of the biggest ways we grow. And the other thing that's very exciting, our biggest growth engine is people referring their family members, people referring their friends. That is great for several reasons. One, it helps the business grow in a very sustainable manner, but it's a great metric to keep us honest. If that goes up, shows that we're doing a good job. People really seeing the value. And it's true, once they're in, most people stay with us for life then because they see the benefit of it. So we spend a lot of time helping people unpack to get in, and then we use that metric of how much are people bringing in their loved ones and the people they trust. as an indicator to show that we're delivering value.
Well, thank you so much, Rupert. And I know in our next interview with Carl Thurman, we're going to really unpack the financial education side, my passion point. So really looking forward to that discussion. And once again, Rupert, thank you for giving us a little bit of an understanding of the digital platform.
Thank you, Maya.